Hi, and welcome to this edition of Money Minder Market Insights podcast. I'm Ray Black, Chartered Financial Planner and Managing Director of Money Minder Financial Services. I'm joined today, as always, by the brilliant Melvyn, former BBC broadcaster, now podcast and events host, and a familiar voice and face to many of our clients. Thanks for being here, Melvyn.
Thank you, Ray. Hot day today, but plenty of hot topics as well. We're recording this on Saturday, the 12th of July, 2025. And I suppose one of the key things that I've noticed this week, ISAs have been back in the news again. I've got an ISA. I've had one for quite a while. What's the change? What's happening?
Well, the good thing is there isn't going to be any change, Melvyn.
Okay.
That's a good thing, yeah. Not in the short term, at least, anyway. But there was a lot of speculation that there was going to be. So Rachel Reeves is trying to get people to invest more into the UK and more into investment ISAs. And her idea was to reduce the amount that you can get into a cash ISA. At the moment, you can have £20,000 into an ISA and you can split it some into cash and some into investment ISA, or have it all as cash or all as investment ISA. What she wanted to do was bring the level right the way down to just 4,000 or 5,000 in cash, and effectively push people into investing into investment-based ISAs, stocks and shares style-based ISAs, rather than just having it in cash.
It's fair to say cash is quite safe, isn't it? I mean, stocks and shares are a bit more risky.
Yeah, absolutely. But equally, at the same time, cash has got a limited return. We've had some wonderful returns in cash over the last 2 or 3 years compared to what we had for the previous 20. Almost. So actually, they've been paying some very reasonable returns. The biggest problem with cash ISAs is that there's a chance it won't keep up with inflation over the long term. If inflation, and no doubt we'll get onto that a little bit later on today as well, but if inflation is higher than the rate that you're getting on your cash ISA, your money's still going backwards in value, which is why investment ISAs are so popular, to try and get a return above inflation, and then you're getting a genuinely real return.
But looking at the cash ISAs, I mean, recent ones I've been looking at, just over 4%, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Okay, so people could put up to £20,000 a year into that. That's quite a lot of money. And a lot of people have been doing it because it is relatively safe.
For the cash point of view, yeah, absolutely. And for short-term expenditure and things that you've got coming up, absolutely the right thing to do, particularly for higher rate taxpayers as well. And if you've got enough money to be generating more than £1,000 worth of interest each year, because the first £1,000 worth of interest in a building society is within an allowance for a basic rate taxpayer, at least. So you could have 20,000 in a investment ISA and not quite bridge that £1,000 allowance. Anyway, sorry, £20,000 in a building society and not quite bridge that £1,000 worth of interest anyway. But to get cash into an ISA means that that allowance is still free and all of your returns are tax-free. The pushback that she got from building societies and Martin Lewis and various other commentators was, if you restrict the amount you can get into cash to 4,000 or 5,000, it might push people into investing in the wrong places where they really shouldn't be, particularly if it's short-term money. And that was a very reasonable criticism. Good news, she's U-turned and she said, oh no, we're not going to mess about with them just for the minute.
Was the danger also, though, from the banks and the building societies' point of view, that fewer people would invest with them?
There might have been a sideline to that criticism, of course. But I don't disagree with the fact that there are some people that just haven't got the capacity for loss, i.e. the ability to see some of their savings drop 10 or 15% in value because they need it for the new car in a couple of years' time, or a new garden upgrade, or the kitchen sorting out, or just trying to build emergency funds as it is, and trying to force people into a corner of, you must, if you want tax-free benefits, you've got to put it in the stock market, is almost the government getting overbearing on where you should save your money. That doesn't seem fair.
Now, of course, the big thing of the ISA is the tax-free sales point. Did we used to have, was it Tessers before the ISAs?
Yeah.
Are they similar?
Yeah. And it's a really good pan back, that, Melvyn, to Tessers and some of our older watchers might remember even personal equity plans from the mid-90s. So you had a Tessa, £9,000 that you could get into a Tessa tax-free over a few years, or you could have a personal equity plan, also affectionately known as a PEP. And the whole idea of the PEP was that you could get up to £5,000 into a PEP, have tax-free growth, but it was dominated in the UK. The money was going into UK businesses when the PEP was originally envisaged, set up back in the 90s, so that it was encouraging investment in the UK. Now, since early noughties or so, they opened up the spectrum so that people can invest all over the world in their ISAs, but that doesn't target the money that's essentially a UK tax benefit into UK companies.
So do we go back to PEPs?
I think there's a high, strong likelihood that sometime later on this year or next, if she can get away with it, or if the government can get away with it, they will be looking to restrict the amount that goes into international equities and into UK equities within ISAs. So an example, and this is just me thinking out loud, this is my speculation about, well, if you were going to do this, how might you do it? I think what a really good way that they could perhaps do it is say, right, well, out of your 20,000 ISA allowance, we're now going to increase that to 25,000, of which you can have a maximum, for example, of £10,000 in cash or £15,000 in cash, or £10,000 in UK and £10,000 in international equities. But in the very early days of ISAs, we had mini and maxi ISAs and a life assurance ISA. It was quite complicated. And whilst I don't want to get back to complication, if they really want to police that tax-free benefit and get more money going into the UK, then maybe a new UK ISA that was similar to the PEP, but is say, from April next year, you can have £10,000 in a UK ISA, £10,000 in an international equity ISA, and another 10, 5, whatever it might be into cash. Something like that might actually work. My only concern with it is if you restrict it so that they've got to go into investment, if everybody's got to go into investment ISAs, I think you will push some people into the wrong places.
It will frighten some people, won't it?
Yeah,
some people,
and then they won't save at all, potentially.
Yeah, indeed. We'll watch this space on that one. So that's something that's not changing. So I can sit comfortable with my ISA at the moment. Yeah, it's okay. Let's talk about the UK economy. GDP contraction. What is GDP first of all?
Gross domestic product. It's your turnover. So if you consider the UK as a business, it's the turnover of the UK, however much that turnover is from all of the products and all of the services that are provided. And GDP is something that's measured in all of the countries around the world. One of the highest is America, China, those kind of areas. They've got huge turnovers. So GDP is just the amount of turnover for a country. And if it's going backwards, that means that growth isn't happening. And when you've got inflation to bear with as well, what we really need to see is GDP in all countries going up, so that you're looking to see an increase in turnover. Any business, small or large, generally speaking, would like to see at least an increase in their turnover and potentially their profit that's in line with inflation.
So if you're not increasing, you're going backwards, basically.
Exactly. And if it happens for a couple of quarters on the trot, you then get into something called a technical recession. So it's negative or flat GDP growth over a 6-month period will put us into a technical recession in the UK, which is what Germany have been struggling with for the last couple of years. In and out of recession, technical recession all the time. Technical recession is we're just not growing. We're flat or negative. And it's looking a little bit scary at the moment that actually within the next few months we could actually be in a technical recession.
So is the government going to have to do something to change that?
Well, there's an age-old theory that, a fairly long-term theory now since the credit crunch, that the way that the government can do that is increase spending, print some more money, lower interest rates, get everybody off and running again, out to the pubs and out for a meal and make them feel richer by introducing more money into the system. You might remember the term quantitative easing way back. So they could do that. Rachel Reeves has put some pretty strict rules in about how much the government should and shouldn't be printing and spending, and they've got some fiscal rules in there that say we don't want to get into that same position as we did with the credit crunch or COVID previously by just printing lots of money, lending money into existence. The reason that they don't want to do loads of that potentially is because it spurs inflation further. And
well, I was just going to say, actually, do the two go hand in hand, inflation and GDP, and getting that balance right?
Yeah. In normal times, pre-credit crunch, inflation was a sign of a strong economy. Because, take an example, you go to the pub and the beer's gone up from £4 a pint to £5 a pint because things are doing well, but your wages have also gone up over the last couple of years, and now you don't mind paying £5 a pint because, and it's all going, and that's inflation. That's a 25% inflation. But because your wages have also gone up, you don't mind paying the extra pound. But then take the other side of the coin. When things are tough, there are going to be more people drinking in discount pubs where you can get a pint for £2, still under £2, actually, in some of them, if you know where you're looking. And
I know where you go.
The country.
I know where you go.
So, you know, that higher inflation, there used to be, and it's still a theory that works reasonably well. If you can keep inflation at kind of 3 or 4% and things are growing along nicely, companies know what they're spending, people know what they're spending, they know what their mortgage is going to be this year, there's no big shocks. There's nothing wrong with a reasonable 2-3% inflation if the economy is growing. But what we're seeing at the moment, which is the worrying and potentially what brought our Rachel to tears in Houses of Parliament the other day, is the fact that what we're actually seeing at the moment is inflation's still quite sticky, but growth is coming down. That's not the right mix.
But I remember something you said to me once, and it did make me think, and I still think about it. Inflation is inflation. Until you get deflation, your real term figures aren't going down, are they? Your 2% this year is going on top of the 2% from last year. It's continually going up, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I think we also get a little bit hoodwinked by the way that inflation is described on the news and what they write in the paper about when they say, "Oh, inflation's come down to 2 and a bit percent, or 3 and a bit percent, or it's gone up 0.5%." And you just think about that number, that 2 or 3, which doesn't sound terrible. But when it's compounding on top of itself over a number of years, it really mounts up. Einstein was asked many moons ago what he thought the most powerful force in the world was, and his answer was compound interest, which is interest on interest on interest. Now, to give you an example of that, look at your shopping bill and look at, and this is all ONS searchable, the data's all there. If you look at the price of a value loaf of bread in January 22. So we're talking the big brand supermarket value loaves, essentially. Way back in January 22, all of 3 years and a bit ago, you could buy a loaf of bread like that for £1.08. It's now £1.40 and has been for the last few months. So we're now talking about, over that period of time, a 35% increase in the cost of bread.
That's just one thing.
One thing. And that's where the cost of living crisis, whilst it's been, I guess, sidelined because of everything else that's going on in the world, that's where the cost of living crisis is still absolutely there. I mean, people are seeing it on their shopping bills month in, month out. And that is where the Bank of England and the government are being concerned, because what they don't want to do is spike inflation up too much by printing loads more money, because then people want more wages, and it's a loop. It just goes round and round and round. Equally, what you don't want is for everything to fall off a cliff either, because nobody's going out and spending anymore. And that's deflation, which potentially could be worse for the country and for the globe. And that's my concern at the moment, that in time, whilst we've been focused on inflation for the last 2 or 3, 4 years, actually in time, depending on what happens elsewhere in the world and what's going on here and how that GDP is going and whether it's growing or going backwards, you might find people just stop spending and deflation then comes in and you're waiting for stuff to get cheaper at some point in the future. But think about all the businesses that are trying to pay their employees, but they're not selling anything. You can't pay wages if you've got no income.
No, indeed. So that's the inflation side of things. We touched on interest rates again, you know, all connected here with the way we live and the things that we do. Interest rates, I mentioned on the ISAs, I was looking at about 4%, I think, for the last one that I took out. Are interest rates generally coming down at the moment then?
Yeah, they are. And I'm sorry to say, I'm now seeing interest rates in the big brand building societies on instant access accounts. If you're not looking, on instant access accounts are back less than 1% again.
Really?
Yeah. And that conversation, again, where it all links together, there's 3 different measures of inflation. And the one that tends to come out in the press, and the one that the Bank of England would prefer us to be quoting all the time, is CPI, consumer price inflation, and that's at 3 and a bit at the moment. But CPIH, which is the one that they really should be monitoring themselves, the H stands for housing costs. So consumer price inflation, including housing, is at 4%. And RPI, a measure of inflation that we've been keeping a tab on back since 1947 originally, is currently running at 4.3%. So if you're only getting 1% in a XYZ building society easy access deposit account, it's literally every year that goes by, that money's becoming worth less. It will not buy you as much next year or the year after. So even at 4, we're really on the edge of whether that's a real rate of return or not. A real rate of return is when you've got a bit of growth for the fact that the cost of living's going up and a bit extra. And it's the bit extra that's the real rate of return. Otherwise, you're just standing still.
Is it worth people shopping around, though, to see
Absolutely.
what deals they can get?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some good deals out there. And there's some quite reasonable terms available. One of the ones I'm quite happy to mention, that Nationwide Building Society, for example, who now own Virgin as well, have got 2 ISAs there, triple access ISAs as far as Nationwide are concerned. And I think the Virgin option, essentially the same, is called a defined access, something similar to that. But it's essentially the same principle. Put some money in, you get 4% at the moment, but you're only allowed 3 withdrawals per year. So the trick with that is if you're going to take some money out of the ISA because you need it, holiday, car change, do something to the house, whatever else it might be, take the amount out that you want in a chunk. Don't keep popping in and out, £200 here, £500 there. Don't use it like a bank account. Use it as a place where it's your emergency funds and the place where you're going to pull money out of at an amount, a couple of thousand, few thousand, but try and keep within that 3 per year withdrawal allowance to keep yourself up. And it's 3 per rolling 12 months, I believe, to keep that higher rate going round. And if you've got enough to be able to do if there's 2 in a relationship and you've got enough to do 20,000 each for each partner, between the 2 of them, you've then got 6 bites of the cherry over the year. Yeah. 3 out of this one, 3 out of that one. Happy days. But it's a good rate of return. At least is somewhere close to inflation. It's not beating it, I'm afraid, but at least it's close to.
Shop around is the trip. Let's talk about global situations. We haven't mentioned Trump in this podcast yet, but we will do now. We had thought there might be sort of more news on tariffs and trade agreements and that sort of thing. What is the latest news from the Trump world?
It changes every day, as we know.
Every hour.
Yes, there is some new news. Now, I was a bit disappointed, Melvyn, to be honest with you, because for the last few weeks, I've been saying, well, Liberation Day April the 2nd, when he came out with his big board and said, this is what we're going to charge you all on tariffs that were in no way, shape or form reciprocal. They weren't even close to being reciprocal. They were all to do with trade surpluses. And that is not the way economists work out what tariffs should be. It's the way he worked out that he wanted them to be. And I'm sure he must have had some advisors saying to him, no, sir, this isn't the way we do it. I can almost feel the conversation where he was in the Oval Office saying, well, that might not be the way you do it, but it's the way I'm going to do it. And that's what I'm going with. And I don't think he could have had very deep discussions with any of his advisories about it before he came out with that board. But he called it, if you remember, Liberation Day. April the 2nd, Liberation Day. We're going to make America great again. We're moving into the golden age. Big speech, little board, big tariffs on. And then markets tanked. US market was down not far off 20% over the space of a few days. The UK market was down 13, 14% over the space of a few days. We didn't drop as much, but we still did drop. And that was going across the world, essentially, because there was all this, oh my gosh, what's happening next? A few days later, he decided against the tariffs and said, right, now I'm just going to postpone them now because everything was tanking. So he stopped and he said, right, I'm going to give a 90-day pause. Now, a 90-day pause was actually July the 8th. From April the 9th to July the 8th, 90 days was actually July the 8th. Somehow or another, someone decided it was going to be July the 9th. I don't know quite how that happened because 90 days was definitely the 8th of July. And because it was so close, having had Liberation Day on the 2nd, I thought, Independence Day, 4th of July, markets are closed. I wouldn't be surprised to see Trump coming out with another board on Independence Day saying, I brought you Liberation Day, here's Independence Day, and look at all this, it's going to make us billions, we're all going to be rich, it's going to be better than it's ever been before, make America great again. And he didn't. He was too busy, I think, partying from the big, beautiful bill that you might have heard about on the news the day before that they got just through, which essentially gave tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires and took some Medicare and Social Security away from the lower end of the American population. So it's not particularly big and it's not particularly beautiful in my personal opinion.
But a lot of people still love him there, don't they?
Less so than they did, I think, genuinely. If you look at the popularity polls, it has been changing because he is very staunch. And he says stuff sometimes, I think, that he's not really thought about before he comes out with them. The prime example years ago was, they're doing some wonderful things with bleach for COVID. Maybe you could drink some of that.
Yes.
No, that's really not a good idea. But, so I think what I've seen of late is the popularity polls because, I mean, you had all that thing with the National Guard being called out.
Oh, yes, to California, wasn't it?
Yeah. And the California governor was saying you've inflated the whole thing. And it looked, I saw Victoria Derbyshire on Newsnight, had some cameras up. It looked like quite a peaceful, there was people with banners. We don't like this, we don't like that. But it didn't look like there was people running around with bricks and guns and that kind of, until the National Guard got there. And I think one of the police officers even shot one of the Australian reporters that was covering.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
With a rubber bullet. So it all got a bit inflated. So I think there is, and there's lots of protests. Clearly, America's divided. You've got the Republican side and the Democrat side, and they do seem to be quite poles apart at the minute. It would be interesting to see what happens. Or what would happen if they were going to go to a vote again at the moment, because he's fighting lawsuits all the time. There's a whole lot of stuff going on that doesn't make him look in the best favour, and I suspect there are some defectors. Equally, there will be some that, like you say, are completely staunch. We love this man. We'll do anything for this man.
We heard of some major tariffs, places like China that was at 200% or whatever it was going to be. We were obviously concerned in this country. One of the things that was of big concern was car exports from the
Yeah.
UK to the USA. That came down a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think it's gone away particularly. Again,
No.
I think he has a knack of shooting himself in the foot with this stuff. Um, that if the vision was to rebuild the Rust Belt in the States and get all that car manufacturing back on track again, there's a lot to be done that won't be done in the space of a few months. And it certainly won't be done just by increasing tariffs on import costs. And it hurts potentially both countries because I mean, take Volkswagen Audi Group, for example. They laid off 10,000 workers this year because they're finding it difficult to compete. And with a big tariff, and the Americans quite like their Audis and their VWs, they quite like the European cars. But if there's big tariffs on board, those US customers won't be buying. What tends to happen with big tariffs is that initially the company will try to pass on that cost to the end user. And to some extent they'll be able to, but there's a pinch point where the end user says, I'm just not paying that.
And I suppose if you're talking about, let's stick with cars for a moment. If you're talking about high end, your Rolls Royce and your Aston Martins and those sort of things, the people buying those, an extra 10 grand on there probably doesn't make a lot of difference to them, does it?
I beg to differ slightly. Wealthy people, very wealthy people, get there for a reason often, and they don't always like to spend more than what they have to.
Right.
So there is the argument that actually you put another 10 grand on a Bentley and it wouldn't be 10. You're not talking about 10, are you? You're talking more like 30 or 40,000.
Yeah, true.
And on those kind of cars. And then actually, yeah, some of those people may well turn around and say, no, I'm not having it. Equally, there will be some of those people that for a status symbol will be quite happy to pay the extra. But you can't just keep loading tariffs on stuff and expect the end consumer to pay it all the time. There'll be a point where the end consumer just says no. They might.
But the argument here is surely that people would say, well, if they're going to put tariffs up on our stuff going to the States, we'll put it just up on here as well.
But that's exactly what's been happening. You look at Canada as a prime example. That's exactly what's been happening. I mean, that is a battle. It's a battle across the board.
That nobody wins?
Yeah, I suspect you're probably right in the end, Melvyn, because you've got prices up on one side, prices up on the other side, wages have to go up to reflect it. It's just a never-ending spiral of tit for tat, for tit for tat, and before you know it, everybody loses out in the end, potentially. Until then you start putting in new trade deals. And talking of which, I mean, the only trade deal that he's got remotely, which is why he had to postpone again, which is what we need to speak about. The only deal that he had remotely close was the one with the UK because of our special relationship that I never worked out what that special relationship is. But our special relationship meant that we got our deal done, but we haven't really got a deal done. We've got a verbal agreement. We've got an agreement in principle that this is how our tariffs are going to work between us. But you could go and put an offer in on a house tomorrow and have an agreement in principle for the next 6 months. And 2 days before you were supposed to complete, you could still turn around and say, actually, no, I don't want it after all. So nothing's written in stone, even with our deal. It will take months to get that trade agreement together. And he's talking about trying to do deals with India and China and all these other places. But there's a lot of friction between them. There's actually 300 odd countries that he's supposed to be talking to about it. Hence, this 1st of August issue coming up. He's postponed to the 1st of August, and then he's blanket tariffing. Now, those blanket tariffs could easily be not the original 10 or 12%, but he's already been talking about 15, 20s, 25s. And yes, it might be another negotiating tool. It might be another, we'll go in hard. We say you want 25 and settle for 15. But it's early August now. that we'll find out what happens with the markets in actual fact. Because last time when they came on, markets tanked. Have you heard Trump's new nickname?
No.
Taco Trump.
Taco Trump.
Taco
Like
Trump.
Bell.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
But it stands for Trump always chickens out.
Right.
So there's this theory, and I think markets are playing to this theory at the moment. There's this theory that these tariffs will never ever happen and that they'll just disappear because he always chickens out and he'll just keep postponing and postponing and postponing while he's trying to do these negotiations. I'm not convinced. And the reason I'm not convinced that that could be the case is because a few weeks ago, 3 judges ruled that he was acting unlawfully with all these tariffs. And that would have been his ideal opportunity to take a step to the side and go, sorry, guys, I was going to make America great again, but now I can't do it. And I can't do it because of these 3 unelected judges that are telling me I'm acting unlawfully. And he had the ideal opportunity to U-turn, take a step back, because he really wasn't doing very well in the polls about it all. So if he was worried about the polls, then he could have actually maybe just U-turned back on, and that gave him the opportunity. That's not what he did. Within 24 hours, he'd appealed it and got another judge saying, yeah, you do what you like, Donald. Absolutely fine. You carry on as you wish. Thank you very much. I'm the president. Of course I will. And so I'm not convinced that it will just end and fitter away. I think it'll be that he will put them on and they'll be fairly chunky.
Still uncertain times then. So you mentioned that when Trump's last announcement sort of happened, the markets reacted around the world to that. So what's happening now? Are we looking at putting money into investments again? Are people still being cautious? What's happening?
At the moment, it's all about balance, I think. We've got our portfolio structured so that there's a chunk of cash kicking around to reduce volatility and provide some buying opportunities in the event that it all does go south for a while.
But as we said earlier, cash isn't making much money at the minute, is it?
No, but if it's a store of value that you can sit on for the time being while you're waiting to see how all this pans out. I mean, we're just talking about Trump and tariffs and general stuff, but think about all the conflicts that are going on, all the niggles between countries. The OBR have just come out and said that the UK economy is not looking as strong as it was, and with all the extra borrowing, that's going to put some pressure as well. There's so much going on at the moment, and what you can't do, if markets do fall, what you can't do is buy into cheaper stock if you haven't got any cash to do it with. You have to have the dry powder in the portfolio to be able to do it. If you're fully invested, 100% invested, and particularly in America, a lot of people are 100% invested in US equities. That's had a really tough time between January and June. The UK did much better. Between January and June, certainly late May, early June, the UK was performing much, much better than the US market over that 6-month period or so. The US market's only just picked up on the year-to-date returns. But if you're fully invested and you take a 20% drop, you've just got to wait. And absolutely, that's the right thing to do. It will come back again eventually, but I'd rather not go through the stress if possible. So taking an opportunity in these rallies like this to just take some profit off and have some capital available in cash, and then just in case it all does go a bit wrong over the next 6 months or so, you've got the opportunity to reinvest that cash. But if the balance point is about not being all in or all out, that's timing of markets, and that's generally dangerous, and most people get it really wrong. Yeah. If you've got 2/3 to 3/4 of the portfolio invested as you normally would have potentially, but in a diversified portfolio, and then a bit of cash kicking around in the background just in case. Markets go up, you're still going to enjoy the growth, still going to enjoy that. But if markets go down, you've actually got some dry powder to do something with.
So we talked a lot about people who perhaps have got potential money to invest or have got investments in certain things. What about the other side of the scale with people that are using credit, that need credit to get through certain things like loans for the car, mortgages, those sorts of things? Tough time there as well, isn't it?
I think it's the worst it's been in a long time. So right now, credit card, car loan defaults, they're up the highest they've been in 14, 15 years. There was potentially a little bit of a relaxation over the last couple of months on that. Mortgage defaults and people being behind on their mortgages, it's the longest run period since 2007 where people are struggling to pay their mortgages. But look at, some people have had double or more increases on their mortgage. Well, they haven't had double the wages.
No.
There's only so much money that comes in at the beginning of the month, and there's so many bills that you have to pay, and it ends up with what's left over at the end. And if there's nothing left over for that last week because you're spent up by week 3, that's what's been going on credit cards and loans. And I think that's where the cost of borrowing's gone up so much over the last 3 years. That's where the real struggle is. And I think the divide between those that have and those that haven't is just potentially getting bigger at the moment. And I really do feel for those people that are struggling from month to month to just pay the bills, feed the kids, make sure the mortgage is all right, and keep a roof over their house. A roof over their heads, because it's not as easy as it was. I think they're the hardest hit at the minute.
Is it the same also for people in business? Because they will be taking out big loans for their business, won't they?
Yeah, so you've got the individual person, car loans, credit cards, mortgages, and then you've got the business owner. They still face all the same problems of cost of raw materials going up, cost of labour going up, the recent change in the autumn budget last year to national insurance contributions costing them a load more money.
And that made a lot of difference if you're somebody who employs people at the lower end of the scale, didn't it?
Right the way across the board, Melvyn.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. Yes, the biggest impact was on the lower earners, but the higher earners, you're still having to pay more for the higher earners as well. So just the whole bill went up considerably. But then that was where they found 22 billion to sink into the NHS to try and help that scenario. It's got to be paid for from somewhere. But the companies, when they're hit by borrowing cost pressures and profits are down because people aren't going out so much. They've not got so much income coming in, particularly the luxury goods that people put off. And maybe they don't go out to the pub, whether it's £2 or £4 a pint. Maybe they don't go out to the pub quite as regularly as they used to because they just can't afford to, because there just isn't as much money left at the end of the month as there was. That has a knock-on effect to the businesses that are wanting to see them so that they can go and spend money in their shop or their pub, whatever it might be. And they have to start trimming. First thing they do is look to reduce raw material costs. Then they start thinking about not taking people on. And next they start thinking about laying people off. And layoffs are much bigger than they have been for the last few years as well. So there's a lot of strain on the UK labour force. And our unemployment rate, I think, now has hit the fastest growing unemployment rate in the developed countries. And I think we're just back up to 4.6%. And with so many people not being able to find jobs or the right jobs, there's a knock-on effect right the way through. And businesses then start to suffer. And like we've seen, well, let me give you an example. In the 3 years, 2007, 8 and 9, the credit crunch years, big UK retail businesses, there was 116 registered for bankruptcy in those 3 year periods. In the 3 years, 22, 23 to the end of 24, the same stat, the same research profile found 134 big UK retail businesses have gone bust. And you know some of the names. Homebase, TM Lewin, the shirt people, Ted Baker, Body Shop, Typhoo Tea went, a British institution. Yeah. Typhoo Tea got sold to a vape company. So these struggles are on in the background, but I just don't think people are getting to hear about it because of everything else that's going on in the world.
Indeed. Difficult times. But I mean, how do you then reassure clients, who have got money invested? Because, most people who are investors don't understand the markets, don't understand what they should or shouldn't be doing. That's why they come to people like you, isn't it?
Agreed, yeah. And the key with that is an old Warren Buffett saying that's often quoted by stacks of us financial advisors, investment advisors all over the world. When others are fearful, be greedy. When others are greedy, be fearful. And at the moment, we're in the greedy side. So there's a lot of people looking at the AI revolution, and I'm an advocate. I absolutely believe it will change the world, and there'll be some good things, and there'll be some not good things about it. But I do think we're going through another change that's as big, if not bigger than, well, probably bigger than we've ever had. With everything that's going on with AI at the moment, it is exponentially moving forward. That does not make, in my opinion, some of these companies like NVIDIA that build the silicon chips for them, for AI machines, worth more than the turnover that we were talking about earlier of the UK. I think it just reached 4 trillion. The turnover of the UK is 3 trillion, and we're a G7 country. Some of these prices are so high at the moment in there. And people are jumping on the bandwagon, and there's that fear of missing out, FOMO. It's that, oh, I've got to be in the markets because I'm missing. Actually, what we've just seen from April to now could just as easily be what they call a dead cat bounce or a bear market rally, where everybody's jumping in, only waiting for it to turn around again. And there's nothing fundamentally that's changed in the last 6 months to 18 months, in fairness. All of these potential issues that can come and bite us on the bum at some point in the future have been around for a long time. It's just the general public aren't aware about it. So how do you tackle with that? Don't necessarily need to be 100% invested. Keep some dry powder. It could go either way, but don't panic if everything all falls down. Have some money ready to invest, because you get a few opportunities to really take advantage. I've been in this profession now for 33 years, and obviously I look after millions and millions of people's family life savings. And it's really, really important to them to make sure that it's at least keeping up with inflation, but preferably getting a real return over that. And I'm pleased to say that over the last 26 years I've been running Money Minder, we've done that consistently over many, many, many years. But there are now there are times now and again, the odd occasion, where I just go a little bit cautious. One was 2000, dot-com boom. Another one was 2008. We wrote to all our clients at that point saying, I think you ought to take some profit off. Another one was Brexit. We took some profit off just before the Brexit drop. This isn't about timing markets. This is just about understanding that things always don't go up in a straight line like people think. And now and again, it's handy just to say, thank you very much, put a bit of profit in the back pocket, take a step back, and just see what happens in the world for a while. Worst case scenario is that you miss out on a little bit of growth because you've not been fully invested over a period of time, 6 months, a year, 18 months. Markets have grown 10%, you've only made 7. Hey, to protect yourself from the potential grief the other way around, that's not a bad situation to be in at all. Equally though, if markets do drop and you've got some cash to deploy, I've just reeled off 4, if you include COVID, 5 times in the last 33 years I've been doing this, that I've been scrabbling around for my own money and client money to say, this is actually a really good time to be investing. But it's when everybody else is running away. And that's the key with trying to take emotions out of the decisions you make about your investments, and trying to keep in mind that there are opportunities that now and again come along, and just to try and take advantage of them.
Okay, hot day in July today. What about the summer months? Is it a busy time in the worlds of finance and money over the next month or so?
Well, it shouldn't be normally, because everybody goes on holiday and it's supposed to be a quiet period, really. There's an old saying in stock markets, again, go away in May, come back again St. Leger's Day.
Right, okay.
Because taking profit in May and coming back a little bit later on, there's volatility in the summer, but not a lot going on potentially. I'm not sure that we're going to get that this time. 1st of August is the next trigger point And there have been a number of trigger points over the last couple of years that I keep looking forward to, because what you're trying to do is get an idea of what might happen next. 1st of August, Trump comes out with another board, and it looks as though he's going that way. Look at the headlines and you can see it coming out. 1st of August, 25% tariffs across all of these countries because they've not engaged with us. And it won't change until you come to the table and start talking to us. That's what we're charging you. I can't help thinking that's another opportunity for markets to take a dip again. Genuinely, if he does it. What's the alternative? Postpone them another month. More uncertainty, more volatility. Or they're off altogether. Least likely. The absolute least most likely outcome is that it'll come out on 1st of August. And, oh yeah, we're friends with everybody now, and we've decided to U-turn completely on tariffs altogether. I don't think he's for turning. When those 3 judges ruled that he'd been acting unlawfully, within 24 hours he was out. And I've said to a number of my clients over the last few weeks, it makes me feel like he probably feels like a tiger in the corner being prodded with a stick about this stuff. And you prod a tiger in the corner of the room that isn't properly caged, he's going to come out fighting, isn't it? So I can kind of see that kind of going on. So August, September, October. Our
own budget to look forward to, haven't we?
Yeah, right. So everything going on in the States, all those conflicts, we are starting to see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with some of those conflicts, which is good. That's from a humanitarian point of view, that's brilliant. But economically, there's still plenty of stuff going on in the background that's a little bit uncomfortable in places that could all start to come out in the wash through August, September, October, and provide us some really good buying opportunities by October through till early next year even. The budget, she's really struggling with her finances. There's lots of speculation about more taxes, and in theory, the people that the voting public want her to target are the wealthier people. But it could be argued that some of those wealthier people are already overtaxed. You talk to a proper tax expert and look at the high rates of tax, additional rates of tax, and the amount of money that they earn compared to what goes to the tax man. Those higher earners pay a lot in. And if she puts taxes up even more, we're currently seeing millionaires and billionaires leave the UK. They're just going because they're looking at the option and saying, well, I can be somewhere else in better weather and perhaps not pay anywhere near as much in tax. I've worked hard for it. I'll just go. And there are whole websites dedicated to finding a new place for those wealthy people to live, and they'll sort everything out almost like a travel agent for you. And we're losing. This last couple of years or so, we've lost more billionaires and millionaires in the UK.
Really? We've lost people have really gone?
Moved out. Yeah, loads. Gone. Just moved away. And you can understand why. And if she goes too hard, don't get me wrong, I don't envy the job that the government's got at all, whether it's blue, green, yellow, red, whatever colour, that they all have the same concerns, which is how do you do the right thing for the country without upsetting the majority of the population who are going to curse you for it and throw you out next time round? It's a dodgy balance. Don't get me wrong, I'm not feeling sorry for politicians. They chose their career, so that's what they decided that they would put their energy into. But I'm not saying it's easy by any means. And I think this October budget, it's highly likely that they're going to try and start to do more with tax, and that's not going to be helpful at all. So,
and it won't be popular, will it?
No, of course it won't. And yet, weirdly, but nobody seems to go back in history. Some of the most successful economies in the world, when you go back, had low tax rates and encouraged growth and less regulation. Hong Kong is an absolute prime example. A guy called Cowperthwaite was the chancellor in the early 60s in Hong Kong. He was actually a Japanese prisoner of war. Second World War finished. he effectively run the finances in Hong Kong, and the government back in the UK were wanting all the figures so that they could work out what tax they needed to charge Hong Kong. But what Cablethwaite did was just put a flat rate, I think it was 15%, flat rate across the board, and deregulated everything. And it went from a small island with a little bit of a dock to this huge exporting economy. And as you and I are old enough to remember, when we were kids, all the toys were made in Hong Kong. Yeah. That was because it had such a low tax rate, low regulation. Get on, build as many toys as you feel you can, and just grow. But he did it with lower taxes, not higher taxes, lower taxes, because no one's then trying to avoid it. You think about those millionaires and billionaires that we were just talking about, or anybody with a higher rate tax threshold that's actually getting hammered. They'll take advice, won't they? And the more tax you levy or try to levy, particularly on that end of the market, the more likely they are to get a really clever lawyer in and start shipping stuff offshore so that they don't have to pay UK tax. Amazon's a good example. They sell no end of stuff to us in the UK. How much tax are they paying in the UK? Next to nothing. And their main distribution centre local to us is Dublin. So it's in a completely different tax regime to us. So people will find ways around high taxes. So that's probably not going to help her too much. And if you take that Hong Kong model, look at the flat rate, low regulation. All that Taiwan did was copy the Hong Kong model. And then as we got older, you'll remember all the toys were made in Taiwan. China followed the Taiwanese model. Now all the toys are made in China and have been for the last 20 years or so.
Let's get them made here again. Come on.
Say again, get made here again.
Let's get them made here again.
Do you know what? And that's a really good point to mention, because that is what's happening around the world. It's called mercantilism, and it's about, we don't want to buy from elsewhere. We want to build it here, and we want to make as much as we can onshore. That's
what Trump wants to do, isn't it?
Exactly what it's about. Yeah, absolutely. He's saying we shouldn't need to buy everything from all these other countries. We should be able to do it all here. But there are some things that are much better to buy from other countries. There are things that we can't grow here. Coffee is an example. Palm oil that's in loads of stuff is mostly palm oil plantations in Vietnam and Cambodia. We put massive tariffs on those, but they haven't got any palm oil plantations that I'm aware of in the US. I don't know whether they've branched into that. There are certain things that we just can't do. But every country is becoming more and more insular. And if you think about the populist discussions that are going on from politicians at the moment, get rid of the immigrants, more jobs for our people at home, build it here, not over there. All this kind. It is a really popular discussion at the moment, but it's a retraction from globalisation that's been running for 50, 60 years. It actually invented in Melton Mowbray, of all places. There you go, local connection to globalisation. A company called Kira came up with that idea after the Second World War, a think tank, 1948. I think they were set up.
Do you know, Ray, you're absolutely full of it, aren't you?
That's not the first time that's been said.
So much stored away up there. Look, it's always great to get your insights and get how you're feeling about different things. If people have picked up anything we've talked about today and want to take it a bit further, what's the best thing to do?
Well, first and foremost, I think obviously a lot of our existing clients will read this. If you're not an existing client, by all means, give the office a call, and wherever we can help out, we can. If you're concerned about things or just want a second view, by all means, get in touch. And I think the main thing is to try, regardless of whether you speak to us or somebody, detach emotions, try and be calm, level-headed. There's a lot going on in the world. There has been a lot going on in the world for a while, and things do look quite choppy right now. But be very, very careful about this FOMO and fear of missing out, thinking that you've got to have everything in the markets because otherwise you're going to be left behind. That isn't always the case at all. So calm, collected, and if you're really not sure, seek advice from someone that isn't just a financial advisor, but preferably a chartered investment advisor, someone that can really understand all of these big global topics to help you understand them as best as possible so that you can make good decisions going forward, or at least informed ones.
Ray, as always, good to chat. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, you too. Take care, Melvyn. Cheers for now.
Yes.